Hi Reddit. This is my first time posting, and I'm using a throwaway account because this is all so raw and personal. I need advice, or maybe just a place to vent. My name is Adam, 36M, and I've been married to my wife, Lisa, 34F, for 10 years. We have 2 kids, a mortgage, and what I thought was a strong marriage. But life has a way of throwing curveballs you never see coming. Lisa and I met in college. She was the outgoing, bubbly girl everyone wanted to be around, and I was the quieter, more reserved guy who preferred staying in with a book. Somehow, we clicked. She brought light into my life, and I grounded her when things got too chaotic. Our differences were what made us strong, or so I believed. Everything started to unravel about 6 months ago. Lisa began acting differently. She was on her phone more often, giggling at texts she didn't share with me. She started going out more, claiming she was meeting friends or attending networking events for work. It felt odd, but I didn't want to seem controlling or paranoid. I trusted her. Or at least, I wanted to trust her. The first real crack appeared one Saturday. Lisa said she was heading to the farmer's market with her friend Megan. She left early in the morning and didn't come back until the late afternoon. When she did, she looked a little disheveled, not messy, but like someone who'd been somewhere other than a bustling market. I asked her how it went, and she gave me a vague answer about how crowded it was and how Megan had bought so much honey. Her tone felt off, but I let it go. I didn't want to be the kind of husband who interrogates his wife over every little thing. Still, a part of me couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The following week, while doing laundry, I found something odd in the pocket of Lisa's jeans, a receipt for a parking garage downtown. It wasn't near the farmer's market, and it was dated for the same Saturday she'd gone out with Megan. My stomach dropped. Why would she need to park downtown if she was at the market? And why hadn't she mentioned it? That evening, I casually brought it up. "Hey, Lisa," I said, holding up the receipt. "You parked downtown last Saturday?" Her face froze for a split second before she recovered. "Oh, yeah," she said. "Megan and I decided to grab lunch downtown after the market. It was kind of spontaneous." Her explanation sounded reasonable, but something about the way she said it felt rehearsed. Still, I didn't want to push. I told myself I was overthinking things and let it drop. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Over the next few weeks, Lisa's behavior grew even stranger. She started dressing up more when she went out, nothing overly suspicious, but enough that I noticed. She also began locking her phone, something she'd never done before. When I asked her about it, she laughed it off, saying, "Oh, I've just been getting spam calls. It's easier this way." But the real turning point came one evening when Lisa said she was working late at the office. I decided to surprise her with dinner, thinking it would be a sweet gesture. I packed her favorite takeout and drove to her office, only to find the building dark and empty. Her car wasn't in the parking lot. I sat there in my car, my heart pounding. I tried calling her, but she didn't answer. About an hour later, she texted me, saying she was just wrapping up and would be home soon. When she walked through the door, I asked her how work was, and she launched into a detailed explanation about a last-minute project. I didn't say anything about going to her office. I wanted to see if she'd come clean on her own. She didn't. The final straw came when I checked our credit card statement. There was a charge for a motel about 30 minutes outside of town, dated for the same day she'd been working late. My hands shook as I stared at the screen. This wasn't just a parking garage or a weird location. This was undeniable. That night, I confronted her. "Lisa, I need to ask you something," I said, my voice trembling. "Why is there a charge for a motel on our credit card?" Her face went pale, and for a moment, I thought she might deny it. But then she sighed, her shoulders slumping. "Adam, I'm so sorry," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. I made a mistake. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. A mistake. I repeated, "You don't just accidentally go to a motel, Lisa. What happened?" She admitted to meeting someone, a man she'd met through a mutual friend. She claimed it had only happened once, that it didn't mean anything, and that she regretted it immediately. "I love you, Adam," she said, sobbing. "I love our family. I don't know why I did it. Please, please don't leave me." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to pack a bag and walk out the door, but another part of me remembered the woman I had loved for 10 years, the mother of my children. I told her I needed time to think, and I spent the night on the couch, staring at the ceiling and wondering how we had gotten here. The morning after Lisa's confession, I woke up on the couch with a pounding headache. I hadn't slept at all. My mind had been racing all night, replaying every moment of our marriage and wondering where it had gone wrong. The woman I trusted most in the world had betrayed me, and now I was faced with a decision I never thought I'd have to make. Should I try to forgive her, or should I walk away? Lisa came downstairs, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She sat down across from me, but I couldn't even look at her. The weight of her actions hung heavy in the air between us. Adam, she said quietly, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to make this right, but I want to try. Please, don't give up on us. Her words felt hollow, like an apology rehearsed too many times. But I couldn't ignore the pain in her voice, the desperation in her eyes. Why, Lisa? I finally asked. Why would you do this? Wasn't I enough? She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. It wasn't about you. It was about me. I felt lost, like I wasn't myself anymore. He made me feel wanted, Adam, but it was a mistake. I know that now. Her explanation didn't make it any easier to stomach. If anything, it made it worse. I had always supported Lisa, always tried to make her feel loved and appreciated. Hearing that she'd sought that validation elsewhere felt like a slap in the face. I need time, I said finally, my voice cold. I don't know if I can forgive you, Lisa. And honestly, I don't know if I want to. She nodded, her shoulders sagging. I understand. Take all the time you need. But please, don't shut me out completely. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Lisa tried to show me she was sorry in every way she could, leaving me notes, making my favorite meals, giving me space when I needed it. But none of it erased the betrayal. None of it made the pain go away. I decided to go to therapy, not because I thought it would save our marriage, but because I needed to process my own emotions. Lisa agreed to join me, and we found a couples therapist named Dr. Keller. Our first session was tense, to say the least. Why are you here? Dr. Keller asked us both. Lisa spoke first. Because I made a terrible mistake, and I want to fix our marriage. I love Adam, and I hate what I've done to him. Her words sounded sincere, but I still couldn't bring myself to believe them fully. When it was my turn, I said, I'm here because I don't know what else to do. I feel broken, and I don't know if I can ever trust her again. Dr. Keller nodded, her expression empathetic. Trust is a fragile thing, especially after infidelity. Rebuilding it takes time, effort, and honesty. But it's not impossible if both of you are willing to do the work. The session ended with a list of exercises for us to complete, including open conversations about our feelings and daily check-ins. It felt awkward at first, but I could see that Lisa was trying. She was answering my questions honestly, even when it was uncomfortable, and she was making an effort to be transparent about her actions and her whereabouts. One evening, as we sat down for a check-in, I decided to ask Lisa more about where the affair had taken place. I didn't know if I was ready to hear the answer, but I needed to know the full truth if I was ever going to move forward. Where did it happen? I asked, my voice steady. Lisa hesitated, her hands trembling slightly. At the storage unit. I blinked, confused. The storage unit? The one we rent for the extra furniture? She nodded, her face flushed with shame. It was his idea. He said it was private, that no one would suspect anything. I know it sounds ridiculous, but at the time, I wasn't thinking clearly. Her answer stunned me. The storage unit was such a mundane, unassuming place, a location I never would have guessed. The thought of her meeting someone there, sneaking around behind my back, made my stomach turn. That's disgusting, I said, unable to hide my anger. You couldn't even respect our home enough to keep it out of something we share? I know, she said, tears streaming down her face. I hate myself for it, Adam. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I'm telling you everything because I want to be honest. I want to earn back your trust. Despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to end our marriage, not yet. I kept thinking about our kids, about the life we had built together. I didn't want to throw it all away without trying to fix things first. So, I decided to give Lisa a second chance. I'm not doing this for you, I told her one evening. I'm doing this for our family. But if you ever lie to me again, if you ever betray me again, it's over. No second chances. She nodded, her expression solemn. I understand, Adam. And I promise, I won't let you down. For a while, it seemed like things were getting better. Lisa was attentive, loving, and open in ways she hadn't been in years. Therapy was helping us communicate more effectively, and I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could get through this. But as much as I wanted to believe her, there was a part of me that couldn't let go of the doubt. And as I would soon learn, that doubt wasn't unfounded. For a while, it felt like things were improving. Lisa was doing everything she could to prove that she was committed to rebuilding our marriage. She was transparent about her schedule, called or texted me whenever she was out, and made a noticeable effort to engage with me and the kids more. It felt genuine, and for the first time in months, I started to believe we might actually get through this. But there were cracks beneath the surface, cracks that neither of us could ignore. Even though I had agreed to give Lisa a second chance, I couldn't silence the voice in my head that kept whispering, "What if it happens again?" Every time her phone buzzed, I felt a pang of anxiety. Every time she left the house, a part of me wondered if she was really going where she said she was. Trust is fragile, and even though Lisa was doing everything right, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't adding up. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching TV, I noticed Lisa glancing at her phone more often than usual. She wasn't smiling or laughing like she had during her affair, but the behavior still set off alarm bells. I decided to ask her about it. "Who's texting you so much?" I asked casually, trying to keep my tone light. She looked up, startled. "Oh, it's just Megan," she said quickly. "We're talking about her birthday plans." Her response seemed innocent enough, but something about her tone felt off. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I needed to trust her if our marriage was ever going to heal. But the seed of doubt had already been planted, and it began to grow. The next few weeks were a roller coaster. Some days, I felt like we were making real progress. Lisa was attentive, loving, and genuinely seemed remorseful for what she had done. Other days, the doubt and fear consumed me. I couldn't stop replaying the events of her first betrayal in my head. How she had lied so effortlessly, how she had gone behind my back without a second thought. It was hard to believe that someone capable of that kind of deception could change so quickly. One night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I started to notice patterns in Lisa's behavior. Patterns that reminded me of the time before her first confession. She was dressing up more when she went out, claiming she needed to look professional for work meetings. She was more protective of her phone, keeping it face down on the table or taking it with her when she left the room. And then there were the last-minute plans with friends that seemed to pop up more and more frequently. I tried to dismiss these thoughts as paranoia. After all, Lisa was doing everything she could to rebuild my trust. She was open about her schedule, checking in regularly, and making an effort to communicate better. But as much as I wanted to believe her, I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. The breaking point came one Friday evening. Lisa had told me she was going out with coworkers for happy hour, a completely reasonable plan that didn't raise any immediate red flags. She kissed me goodbye, promised she wouldn't stay out too late, and left. Around 9 p.m., I decided to text her to see when she'd be home. She didn't respond. At first, I told myself she was probably just busy or her phone had died. But as the hours ticked by with no word from her, my anxiety grew. By midnight, I was pacing the living room, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. I tried calling her, but it went straight to voicemail. Finally, at 1 a.m., she walked through the door, looking disheveled and avoiding eye contact. "Where have you been?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "I told you," she said, her tone defensive. "I was out with coworkers. My phone died, and I lost track of time." Her explanation sounded rehearsed, and I couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in my chest. "Why didn't you borrow someone's phone to let me know?" I asked. "You knew I'd be worried." She sighed, clearly annoyed. "I don't know, Adam. It just didn't occur to me, okay? Can we not do this right now?" Her dismissive attitude only fueled my suspicion. I decided not to push further in the moment, but I knew I needed to find out the truth. The next morning, while Lisa was still asleep, I decided to check her phone. I hated myself for snooping, but I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was off. Her phone was locked, but I remembered the passcode from before. My hands trembled as I unlocked it and opened her messages. What I found confirmed my worst fears. There were texts from a contact saved as Jess, but the messages made it clear that this wasn't a woman. The tone was flirtatious, intimate, and far too familiar. One message in particular made my stomach churn. "Last night was amazing. I can't wait to see you again." I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Lisa hadn't just betrayed me once, she had done it again, after all the promises, after all the therapy, after everything we had been through. I put the phone down, my hands shaking with anger and heartbreak. I didn't know what I was going to do, but one thing was certain, I couldn't go through this again. When Lisa woke up that morning, I was waiting for her in the kitchen, her phone sitting on the counter in front of me. I didn't even bother trying to mask my anger. The betrayal was too fresh, too raw. "Morning," she said cautiously, noticing my expression. "What's wrong?" I picked up her phone and held it out to her. "Who's Jess?" I asked coldly. Her face froze, the color draining from her cheeks. "Jess? What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb, Lisa," I snapped, my voice rising. "I went through your phone. I saw the messages. I saw what you wrote to him. Last night was amazing? Are you kidding me? After everything, you're doing this again." She didn't say anything at first, just stared at me with wide, guilty eyes. Finally, she whispered, "Adam, I can explain." "Explain?" I barked. "What's there to explain? You lied to me again. You promised me it was over. You swore you'd never hurt me like this again. And here we are." Tears started streaming down her face, but I couldn't find it in myself to care. Her tears felt like an insult, a mockery of the pain she'd caused me. "It's not what you think," she said through sobs. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did." "You didn't mean for it to happen?" I repeated bitterly. "You didn't mean to lie to my face? You didn't mean to sneak around again after I gave you another chance? Do you think I'm stupid, Lisa?" She shook her head, her voice trembling. "No, Adam, I don't think that. I know I've messed up. I know I've hurt you. But please, please don't give up on us. I love you." I laughed bitterly. "Love me? You don't love me, Lisa. If you did, you wouldn't keep doing this. You don't destroy the people you love." After our confrontation, Lisa spent the rest of the day begging for my forgiveness. She promised me that it was over with Jess, that she would do whatever it took to prove she was committed to fixing our marriage. But her words meant nothing to me anymore. I had heard it all before, and I wasn't falling for it again. That evening, I packed a bag and left. I couldn't stand to be in the same house as her, surrounded by reminders of the life we had built together, a life she had so carelessly thrown away. I checked into a nearby hotel, needing space to think. The first night was the hardest. I sat in that unfamiliar room, staring at the walls, trying to make sense of everything. How had it come to this? How had the woman I loved turned into someone I couldn't trust? Part of me wanted to go back, to try one more time to save our marriage. But another part of me knew it was over. Lisa had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The next day, I called my best friend, Mike, and told him everything. Mike had always been supportive, but he wasn't the type to sugarcoat things. "Adam, I hate to say this," he said, "but you need to walk away. She's not going to change. She's had 2 chances, and she's blown both of them. You deserve better than this." His words stung, but deep down, I knew he was right. I couldn't keep putting myself through this. I couldn't keep giving Lisa the power to hurt me. After a few days at the hotel, I went back home to talk to Lisa. I knew I needed to be clear and firm about my decision. When I walked through the door, she was sitting on the couch, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "Adam," she said, standing up as soon as she saw me. "Thank God you're home. I was so worried about you." I held up my hand to stop her. "Don't," I said. "I'm not here to stay, Lisa. I came back to talk, but that's it." Her face crumpled, but I pressed on. "I can't do this anymore. I gave you a second chance because I believed in us. I believed you could change. But you've shown me that you can't. You don't respect me, Lisa. You don't respect our marriage." "I do," she cried. "I do respect you, Adam. I made a mistake. I wasn't thinking." "No," I said firmly. "You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. You chose to betray me, not once, but twice. And I can't forgive you for that." Her sobs grew louder, but I didn't waver. I had made my decision, and I knew it was the right one. "I'll stay at the hotel for now," I said. "We'll figure out the logistics later. But I'm done, Lisa. I'm done trying to fix something that you keep breaking." Leaving Lisa was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it was also the most freeing. For years, I had prioritized her happiness over my own, bending over backward to make her feel loved and supported. But in the end, it hadn't been enough. And that wasn't my fault. The months that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. I felt grief for the life I had lost, anger at Lisa for what she had done, and a deep sense of relief that I was no longer stuck in a toxic cycle. I leaned on my friends and family for support, and I started seeing a therapist to help me process everything. As for Lisa, she reached out a few times, asking if we could talk, if there was any way to fix things. But I stayed firm in my decision. I told her that while I wished her well, I couldn't be with someone who had hurt me so deeply. Eventually, I filed for divorce. It wasn't easy, especially with the kids involved, but I knew it was the right thing to do. I wanted to set an example for them, to show them that it's okay to walk away from a relationship that isn't healthy, even if it's painful. Today, I'm in a better place. I've started to rebuild my life, focusing on my career, my kids, and my own happiness. The scars from Lisa's betrayal are still there, but they've become a reminder of my strength, of my ability to overcome even the hardest of challenges. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that love isn't enough. A relationship needs trust, respect, and honesty. Without those things, it's just an illusion. And I refuse to live in an illusion ever again. The divorce process was messy, as I had expected it to be. Lisa and I tried to keep things amicable for the sake of our kids, but the underlying tension was impossible to ignore. Every meeting with the lawyers, every discussion about custody and finances, felt like reliving the betrayal all over again. Each document I signed felt like another nail in the coffin of the life we had built together. We agreed on joint custody of the kids, which was the only thing Lisa seemed truly heartbroken about. She cried during one of our final meetings, saying, "I never wanted this, Adam. I still love you. I'll always love you." I didn't respond. What was the point? Love wasn't enough, not anymore. She had loved me while lying to me, while sneaking around, while betraying me. Her love had become meaningless, and I wasn't about to let her words pull me back into the cycle of hurt and disappointment. The first few weeks after the divorce were the hardest. I moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment close to the kids' school. It wasn't much, but it was mine, a space free of the memories that had haunted me in our old house. I furnished it with care, trying to create a welcoming environment for the kids when they stayed with me. At first, adjusting to single life felt overwhelming. I had spent over a decade being part of a unit, a partnership. Now, I was on my own, navigating a life I hadn't expected to live. But slowly, I began to find my footing. I threw myself into my work, taking on new projects and challenges that kept my mind occupied. I started going to the gym regularly, not just to stay in shape, but to clear my head and release the tension that had built up over the past year. Most importantly, I focused on being there for my kids. They were confused and hurt by the divorce, and I did my best to explain things in a way they could understand. Sometimes, grown-ups have problems that they can't fix. I told them one night when they asked why mommy and daddy weren't living together anymore. But no matter what, we both love you very much, and that will never change. Even after the divorce was finalized, Lisa continued to reach out, trying to repair the damage she had done. She sent long, heartfelt texts apologizing for her actions, asking if we could meet to talk. She even suggested the idea of dating again, saying she wanted to start over and prove she had changed. Part of me wanted to believe her. Part of me wanted to go back to the life we had before everything fell apart. But the larger, stronger part of me knew better. Trust is like glass. Once it's shattered, you can piece it back together, but the cracks will always remain. And with Lisa, the cracks were too deep, too jagged. One day, I told her the truth. "Lisa, I don't hate you," I said. "I wish I could. It would make this easier. But I can't forget what you did. I can't unsee the lies, the betrayal. I've forgiven you in the sense that I'm no longer angry, but I can't let you back into my life. Not like that." She cried, of course. She always cried. But I didn't let her tears sway me. I had given her my heart twice, and both times she had crushed it. I wasn't going to give her the chance to do it a third time. As time passed, I began to feel a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. My life was far from perfect, but it was mine, and it was honest. I didn't have to worry about lies or secrets or hidden messages. I didn't have to wonder if the person I loved was betraying me behind my back. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. I started going to therapy regularly, not just to deal with the fallout of the divorce, but to work on myself. I realized that while Lisa had made her choices, there were things I could learn from the experience too. I learned to set boundaries, to prioritize my own happiness, and to recognize when a relationship was no longer healthy. One evening, as I was tucking the kids into bed, my daughter asked me, "Daddy, are you happy?" Her question caught me off guard, but after a moment, I smiled. "Yeah, sweetheart," I said. "I think I am." And I meant it. Happiness didn't look like what I had imagined it would, but it was real. It was the quiet satisfaction of knowing I had made the right choice, the strength I had found in moving forward, and the hope that the future held something better. Lisa's betrayal had broken me, but it had also taught me how to rebuild. And for that, I was grateful. After the dust of the divorce had settled, I found myself in unfamiliar territory, a single man in his mid-30s, trying to rebuild a life that had been shattered twice by betrayal. It wasn't just about healing from Lisa's actions, it was about figuring out who I was outside of our marriage. For so long, my identity had been tied to being a husband and a father. Now, I was learning to stand on my own. Therapy continued to be a cornerstone of my recovery. In one session, my therapist, Dr. Morris, asked me a question that caught me off guard. Adam, what do you want for yourself? At first, I didn't know how to answer. I had spent so much time focusing on what Lisa wanted, what the kids needed, and what the marriage required that I hadn't stopped to think about my own desires. I guess I just want peace, I said finally. And maybe happiness. Dr. Morris nodded. That's a good start. But peace and happiness can mean different things to different people. What do they look like for you? Her question stayed with me long after the session ended. What did peace look like for me? What did happiness mean? Over the next few weeks, I started exploring those questions. I realized that peace wasn't just about avoiding conflict. It was about creating a life where I felt fulfilled and secure. Happiness wasn't about grand gestures or monumental achievements. It was about finding joy in the little things. I began making small changes that added up in big ways. I joined a local hiking group, something I had always wanted to do but never made time for. Being out in nature, surrounded by people who shared my love for the outdoors, felt like a breath of fresh air, literally and figuratively. I started cooking more, experimenting with recipes that I had never tried before. The simple act of creating something for myself brought a sense of satisfaction I hadn't expected. I also reconnected with old friends I had drifted away from during my marriage. At first, I felt awkward reaching out, wondering if they'd resent me for falling off the radar. But to my surprise, they welcomed me back with open arms. We've missed you, man, my college buddy, Greg, said over beers one night. It's good to see you smiling again. Those connections reminded me that I wasn't alone. Even though my marriage had ended, I still had people in my corner, people who cared about me and wanted to see me succeed. While I was working on myself, I was also navigating the complexities of co-parenting with Lisa. We managed to keep things civil for the kids' sake, but it wasn't always easy. Every time I saw her, it brought back memories of what we had lost and what she had done. But I refused to let those feelings cloud my relationship with our children. I made a point to create new traditions with the kids, things that were just ours. Friday nights became movie and pizza night, where we'd pick a film, make homemade pizza, and laugh until our sides hurt. On weekends, we'd go on little adventures, visiting the zoo, exploring local parks, or trying out new activities like mini golf or bowling. Those moments became my anchor, reminding me of what truly mattered. One evening, as we were sitting around the dinner table, my son, Ethan, looked up at me and said, "Dad, you're really fun now." His comment caught me off guard. Was I not fun before? I asked, laughing. You were, he said thoughtfully. But you seem happier now. Like, really happy. His words hit me like a ton of bricks. I hadn't realized how much my unhappiness in the marriage had affected not just me, but my kids too. Hearing him say that I seemed happier made me realize just how far I had come and how much further I could go. About 6 months after the divorce, I ran into Lisa at a school event for the kids. It was the first time we'd had a real conversation since our final meeting with the lawyers. She looked different, tired, like the weight of her choices was finally catching up to her. "Hi, Adam," she said, her voice soft. "Lisa," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. We stood there awkwardly for a moment before she spoke again. "You seem good." "Better." "I am," I said simply. She nodded, her eyes glistening. "I'm glad. You deserve that." It was the closest thing to closure I'd ever get from her. For the first time, I didn't feel anger or resentment. I didn't feel the urge to rehash the past or demand more apologies. I felt nothing, and that nothingness was freeing. It was a sign that I had finally let go. One evening, as I was reading on the couch after the kids had gone to bed, I received a text from Greg. "Hey, there's someone I think you should meet. Her name's Claire. She's smart, funny, and loves hiking as much as you do. No pressure, but I think you'd hit it off." I stared at the message for a long time, my heart pounding. The idea of dating again terrified me, but it also intrigued me. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but maybe, just maybe, it was time to take another step forward. Greg's message sat in my inbox for 2 days before I mustered the courage to respond. My heart was conflicted. On one hand, the idea of meeting someone new felt overwhelming. The thought of opening myself up to another person, of risking vulnerability, terrified me. But on the other hand, there was a part of me that was curious, even hopeful. What if this was the beginning of something new? Something better? Finally, I replied. Okay, tell me more about Claire. Greg didn't waste any time. He sent me her number, along with a brief rundown. She worked in environmental science, loved hiking and photography, and had been single for a couple of years. She's a great person, Adam, Greg wrote. And she deserves a great guy, just like you. It took me another week to gather the nerve to reach out. When I did, I kept it simple. Hi, Claire. This is Adam. Greg thought we might get along. Would you be interested in grabbing a coffee sometime? Her reply came quickly. Hi, Adam. Greg mentioned you. Coffee sounds great. When are you free? Meeting Claire was like stepping into a different world. We met at a small cafe downtown, the kind of cozy spot with mismatched furniture and a menu written in chalk. I was nervous, so nervous that my hand shook slightly as I sipped my coffee. But Claire's easygoing nature quickly put me at ease. She had a warm smile and a laugh that felt genuine, unforced. We talked about everything, our jobs, our hobbies, the places we'd traveled to, and the ones we still wanted to visit. Claire told me about a hiking trip she'd taken to Glacier National Park, her eyes lighting up as she described the sheer cliffs and turquoise lakes. I found myself smiling more than I had in months. By the time we parted ways, I felt lighter, like a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had been lifted. Claire didn't ask me about my past, and I didn't feel the need to explain it. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could just be myself. Over the next few weeks, Claire and I began seeing each other regularly. We went on hikes, tried new restaurants, and spent hours talking about everything under the sun. She was thoughtful and kind, with a quiet strength that I admired. She didn't push for details about my past, but she listened when I chose to share. One evening, as we were sitting on a park bench watching the sunset, Claire turned to me and said, "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" I hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, more than I ever expected to. She reached for my hand, her touch gentle. You don't have to tell me anything you're not ready to share. But I just want you to know. I'm here. Her words brought a lump to my throat. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that, to know that it was okay to take things one step at a time. Thank you, I said quietly. Claire's presence in my life wasn't just a distraction from the pain of the past, it was something entirely new. She made me laugh, challenged me to try new things, and reminded me that life could still be beautiful, even after heartbreak. A year after my divorce, I stood in my kitchen, cooking dinner with Claire while the kids sat at the table, coloring. It was a simple scene, but it felt profound. It was a moment of peace, of connection, of hope. Lisa and I had settled into a rhythm of co-parenting that, while not perfect, worked well enough. She had apologized again during one of our exchanges, but I kept it brief, telling her I wished her the best but had moved on. And I had. I no longer felt the sting of her betrayal, only a faint echo that reminded me of how far I had come. As Claire and I sat down to eat, Ethan looked up from his plate and said, "Dad, I like Claire. She's nice." Claire smiled warmly. "Thanks, Ethan. I like you too." In that moment, I felt a sense of gratitude I hadn't thought possible. Life hadn't turned out the way I had planned, but it had led me to a place where I could feel happy and whole again. After dinner, Claire and I stepped outside for some fresh air. She looked at me, her eyes thoughtful. "Do you ever think about where you were a year ago?" she asked. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but not as much anymore. It feels like another life." She smiled. "I'm glad you found your way back." I nodded, reaching for her hand. "Me too." As we stood there under the stars, I realized that the pain of the past didn't define me. It had shaped me, taught me lessons I hadn't wanted to learn, but it didn't own me. I had found strength in myself, in my kids, and in the possibility of something new. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited for what the future might hold.